All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Today's call is a challenging one in that it's titled Generating Profit, and we have about 15 minutes. We're going to go over the topic, so we're going to cover a lot of ground in a short period of time. Today we're going to initiate something a little bit new at the end of the call, where instead of asking for questions, if we don't see your hand raised, which is easy to do, you push the number 1, and our moderator, Mike, will see that your hand is raised. If we do not see your hand raised, then we'll end the call at that time. So Mike, our moderator, will bring the questions up that for people that have their hand raised. But today's call, generating profit, is an interesting topic, and really it's what it's all about. It's the bottom line, as many dealers say. And I'm shocked really at a lot of dealerships' attitudes when they first start talking with us and want to improve their departments. A lot of times I hear this comment: just get me to break even. Just get me to where I'm not losing large amounts of money every month. And I'm going to be so happy that I can't tell you how happy that would make me. And in essence, getting them to break even from large losses, it does happen. It does happen fairly quickly. But the thing about the service and parts and fixed ops departments is they should be a profit center. We should always have a strong focus on how to make that department the most profitable in the dealership. Now, we're going to touch on just some key areas, and this call will be recorded and sent to you, so don't necessarily have to take notes. But in the first part of this profitability call, you have to have customer counts, because you can have the largest effective rate in the world. You could have $1,000 per hour effective rate. If we have no customer counts, then you have no ability to generate any hope of profits. So we look at this, and one of the most common things that people run into is they think they need to put a $500 ad in the newspaper, whatever the amount is, thousands of dollars in mailings, and that's on a monthly basis. But then what they want to do with this is bring people in on low-cost labor ops. Oil change, $9.95, or whatever ridiculous low price. It could be $5.95. I've seen it as low as free. And the reason that they do this is they think that that'll build their car count. But the challenge is, will it do it profitably? If you look at the general type of consumer that comes in response to an advertisement on a low-cost oil change or a low-cost service, generally what they want to do is take advantage of that labor operation and leave. Their general decline of every recommended service is normal, and it just doesn't generate a lot of result. And if you're going to give a low-cost labor op away to build count, and I'm not saying I dispute that at all, put a little effort into it and call the customers that have been spending money with you. Use your DMS data and start contacting customers and do a customer-only sale. And offer the same sale to other vehicles that are in the household. You know, for too long we've been going after whatever they bought from the dealership. It could be the new Chevrolet. And we forget the family has 3 Fords. And we want to service the family's vehicles. That should be a goal and a consideration. How many vehicles are in that family? Likely they have two or three, maybe more. A lot of families have 4. But when you go into that, it requires a little effort. Instead of throwing money at a problem, to contact them on the phone, but a disciplined approach using your fixed operations staff is far more beneficial long term for the dealership than to just throw an ad in the paper and hope to bring in hundreds of people to offset it that are going to spend money with you. The second thing on customer counts I want to bring up is when they come in, the experience of that visit has to be wonderful. There has to be a strong emphasis and an effort to bring these experiences to the positive side. Now, I know that's a challenge because when people come into the dealership, something broke. That's not pleasant. I have to get my oil changed. That's not pleasant. And it sure ramps up quickly if we don't have a good experience for them. I've had one accountant just recently, they put in the option so the customer could open a refrigerator in the waiting area and select a beverage or pick up a snack while they're waiting. Now, they went from no snacks, no beverages. They just ramped up their customer experience. And I'm going to tell you that if you want to focus in on profit, generally, don't ever lose concern of the customer experience because that is going to be what retention is all about. If you want to retain a customer, they have to have a wonderful experience when they come into the dealership. They just have to. That means that your advisor staff is good. They're not answering the phone service. They're not saying they can get you in here in 3 weeks. They're not being negative. It's just total focus on customer care. The second thing, or group of items that I think we need to discuss when we're talking about generating a profit is margins. Now, I'm definitely a fan of margins. When we're talking percentage of gross profit as a sale in labor, people might be stunned to hear that I like 74%. Now, that might be considered large, but at the same token, if we're focusing in on the profitability of a department, the margins are critical. If you look at your statement and you're seeing margins of 50, 60%, and you take your labor sales for a whole year and what that's doing to you, it's absolutely critical that you look at what is driving that margin down. Now, on the parts side, I think that it's attainable and reasonable to work towards a 42% markup on customer pay parts. Now, some might say that's an aggressive thing that can't be achieved, but our clients do achieve 42% on customer pay, and they do that in several different ways. It's a situation where you can use an inverted matrix, parts matrix, and on the matrix side of it, look at the phase out of that around $150 or $180 that goes back to straight list. Now, that's not an aggressive matrix, and I think that's the distinction. You can't go in my view, and go cost times 200% on everything, regardless of price, and have good customer retention. But I do consider the margin on labor at 74% and on parts customer pay at 42% reasonable. Now, on internal margins, why should they be any less than less? Why should they be any less? Because what happens, in essence, the used car department is selling the vehicle at cost plus. Now, I'm going to already bring up the controversy here and say that there is a chance if the sales department doesn't do their job, that repaired vehicle goes to the auction and won't generate additional revenue. And I'll challenge that and say that if the repairs of that vehicle were what the vehicle needed to be in great shape, and that repair order was taped to the windshield or made aware when that was going through, it's not a secret. I just, in my view, think it would bring some idea of a benefit at even an auction level. But let's discount that and say it wouldn't bring a penny additional at the auction. And I accept that. It's possible. But I will tell you without a shadow of a doubt that when that used car is put on the lot and it is right, you'll sell more used cars. Most generally, people don't come to somebody in sales and say, you know what, the brakes are crap on this car, the tires are vibrating, it needs all new tires. You fix everything it needs, and then I will go ahead and buy the car. Most generally what happens is they say to themselves or their significant other, hey, this car is terrible. Let's go down to Billy Bob Chevrolet. And they hand the key over to the sales staff, never to buy a vehicle, never to return again. Now, I find that an interesting thing. And if the vehicle is right, you'll sell more used cars off your lot. And isn't that what it's all about? Isn't that part of retaining the customer for life? Even if they get out and didn't purchase or they didn't get the vehicle was repaired or brought through the shop, do you think that it satisfies a customer to have a used car vehicle come back? Hey, the brakes are nasty. Hey, the tires are making an incredible noise just after they buy their vehicle? Or what about what you do to the service department when the used car department comes back and sells one with all of this additional work needed, and they come in and say, hey, this is a sold unit, I need it by tomorrow morning, or worse yet, I need it by 2 o'clock today. Now we disrupt the service department's entire workload and schedule to try and accommodate the used car department's demands to take care of their customer that they just purchased this vehicle. It just makes sense. If you want to have a profitable service department, that you fix the vehicles up as they come in and get put on the lot. You go fix them, you'll sell them. You'll sell them more often. I also want to talk about staffing. And a lot of times technicians get uncomfortable when dealerships are adding technicians. But let's look at technician staffing as a real strong way to generate gross profit and net profit. If you have staffing that would say to your customer that they can get in and process through your shop within 3 business days. 3 business days. So when they call in and say, hey, I need to bring my car in, the maximum would be 3 business days. Now I'm going to throw a wrench out there and say that I also consider used cars and new cars the same cycle time. So if you don't have the technician staffing to accomplish that, then I'm going to encourage you to consider looking at that as a strong way, an opportunity to generate profit. Now, for technicians, there's a ratio between what we call productive staff, which is techs, and non-productive staff, which is advisors, the service manager, and porters. But if you look at the support staff, there has to be at least a 3 technician to 1 support staff ratio to keep your profits on the maximum output. How many techs do you need to generate a net profit? Because if you constantly are understaffed on technicians, guess what? How are you going to generate, and how are you even have the hope of generating enough gross profit to get to a net profit? So how many techs does your shop need to generate maximum result for the financial side of the dealership? And then do you have too many support staff to generate a net profit for the company? And on the technician side, let's again look at that. You've got technicians, they need vacations too, they need training, and yes, they even get ill. So when you're looking at your scheduling, regardless of your reasoning, you can use it, oh, well, I got this tech off, I got that tech off. Always have enough staffing to hit that goal of 3 business days out. Now, that doesn't make everybody comfortable, but then it also has the technicians, provides them the amount of time that they need to look the vehicle over properly. And when they're looking that vehicle over properly, guess what? You're going to sell more work. They will recommend more work, and you will sell more work. However, if the technician staffing is low, and they're merely concerned about how do I get the cars, and I got 5 more cars to bring in today, I couldn't take the time to even look the vehicle over and make recommendations. What if they bought something? And if your shop is in that area, guess what? You're likely struggling to maximize and generate profit. One more thing I want to go over on this technician staffing, always be developing your techs. You can't staff and find technicians at random. The wise shop is taking their lower skilled techs and developing it into higher skilled techs in-house while they're working for you. Don't leave somebody in a low skilled position without training. Always be developing your technician staff. And then last thing in the section I want to talk about on this call of generating profit is costs. Shop supplies, uniforms, these types of things are amazing. And if you don't review them, guess what? You're going to have a lot of them. I'm going to go over a few of my favorites that I've seen. And a good way to control shop supplies is have the parts department track it by technician. Now that's a little bit of a work effort on their part. I sympathize with it. But this one practice alone will cut your shop supply cost 15 to 20%. Now if you take your shop supplies by technician and that is reviewed and the management asks a question occasionally to the technician, hey, what was this? Or, my goodness, a case of brake clean, or whatever the item is. Just a few questions occasionally so the techs know you're looking at it. And whenever you have that program in place, your shop supplies are going down. Look at your uniform bills. These are shocking. The worst I've seen is $30,000 on an annualized basis for the uniform company throwing down floor mats once a week, air fresheners in the restrooms. Air fresheners in the restroom. I've seen dealerships renting mop handles, mop heads, dust, where you go in Walmart and you can buy a can of air freshener that lasts 3 months. You're paying $7 a week for a cherry scented air freshener. They're also great, these uniform vendors, at providing hand soap. The most expensive products that your dealership can buy are on your uniform bill. Pull that out. Look at it. See what they're charging you for. And then see what Sam's Club or one of these places are that you own your own mats. My gosh, you got cleanup crew that can spray off a floor mat, and you'll pay those floor mats off within the first month to own them, rather than to have your uniform guys throw them down once a week and pick them up. Review your costs like that. Same time, review your other vendors at least once a year. Look at where you're buying your parts. Request quotes from them. Once a year, send them a letter. We're reviewing our suppliers and want to know if our current pricing structure is going to be enforced before our quote. Since you're an existing vendor, we're going to give you, obviously, the first thought. However, we are going to quote other suppliers and want to make sure that our pricing structure will be consistent for next year. I'm going to close with this thought. Profit is not a dirty word. And in today's dealership environment, you better be generating profit in your fixed operations. Don't take it for granted. Always be trying, because is going to win in the good times, and they're going to win in the bad times. Now, I'll ask Mike, do we have any hands raised, or we come to a conclusion on today's call? Again, if you want to raise your hand, push the number 1. Mike will see it and respond to it.
John?
Yes. Yes, how are you? Good morning.
Fantastic.
Yes, quick question. What's your feeling on generating profit in the way of, the BGs, the wins, everything that the manufacturer side says we shouldn't be selling?
That's an excellent question, John. Thanks for that. I consider the whole thing on the manufacturers these days. It seems like they're all going the same direction. Cost of ownership is their major feature. And then they say, oh, if you have a flush on the transmission, my gosh, we're gonna say that the warranty's voided, or we're gonna say that our fluid's forever and doesn't need maintenance. Probably my favorite of all of them is brake fluid, because the average age of the vehicle is 11 years old, and I see that brake fluid, of course, absorbs moisture anyway. So we have brake fluid with way over 3% water.
Right.
And yet the manufacturers say, well, that doesn't need service. And there's no way, in my view, you look at a totally sealed transmission, that should ramp up the need for maintenance. We can't even check the fluid level. And yet, the condition of the fluid, and we're supposed to believe that that'll go forever? And I don't know how much you get around, but I know in my travels I'm seeing more and more issues with transmissions and engines because they're going, wait till the light comes on. Or now you can go 10,000 miles on an oil change. These things are not going to work out. Why are these engines all of a sudden starting to go? Is it because we're extending these maintenance schedules out? So even when the manufacturer says the fluid is forever, and I'm talking about reasonable recommendations, it's okay for the dealership to have recommendations that are different from the manufacturer. I like 60,000 miles or 50,000 miles on a transmission flush, but I do see some dealers where they're saying that's part of our 15K service.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that's excessive.
Right.
I just do. But a reasonable maintenance recommendation on a service that is going to extend the life of that engine component, I'm all in favor.
100% appropriate.
Yes. And then if you look at the customer side of it, let's take the transmission. If they service it regularly, then they get the extended warranty benefit from the service. Because I think in BG's case, they pay depending on when that transmission flush first is done, but I think around $50,000, they still pay the first $2,000 of the transmission repair if it's needed. This is a good thing. But power steering flushes, brake fluid flushes, show me one fluid in the vehicle that performs better, dirty, contaminated. I don't know of it. So dirt is still a contaminant. It's a friction material. And I think that that pendulum will start swinging back where these manufacturers, I'm seeing a lot of engines with issues I believe are associated to lack of maintenance.
Right.
And right now they're getting billed back to the manufacturer under warranty. How long are they going to keep that up? I don't know. I don't think it's forever, but it's okay in my view to make reasonable dealership recommendations.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
You bet. Great question, John. Appreciate that. Okay, anyone else with a question that push the number 1, or we'll wrap up today's call. All right, thank you, everybody. Have a great day, and let's keep the Oklahoma folks in our thoughts.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Right. Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Okay, great.
Bye.